So when you're going through your orientation, what's really important is that you go into great detail while you're shooting the actual production, because the more that you can explain things up front about what's possible or not possible in that room, the more questions that you've answered ahead of time so that learners can just fixate and focus again once they get in here. So really kind of think about all the dimensions and questions that you've ever received in your simulation scenario experiences, whether that be in a controlled lab environment like we have here, or whether that be in a hospital environment. Even then, you're going to be dealing with a particular type of world. A little less physical orientation obviously necessarily if we're doing this like in situ on a specific area, but again, that would fixate and focus still primarily on the features of the Manikin, which would be unknown to most new healthcare professionals or those engaging for the first time in high fidelity simulation. I would imagine a SimLab orientation running around 10 minutes so that you could really fully kind of grasp what's going on in that room. With regards to production values, some of the things that are really important right off the bat is to have a tripod so that you can create a lot of steady shots. If you're constantly holding on to the camera, it becomes a little disorienting for the audience, for the viewer, because there's not a lot of stability there, and so they're trying to fixate and focus their attention on the holding the image frame as opposed to paying attention on what's going on in the frame itself. So the more that you can steady your shot and keep it down, the better. One of the fantastic things that Jonathan Sturak, our IT simulation technician, did for our orientation videos was put the tripod itself on some wheels so that it could quickly and easily move around the space without while still maintaining a level of stability. So when recording these shots, it's really important to remember a couple of things. The first thing being the lighting in the particular area. If you have backlighting, which I'll show a picture of here. So what you can see here is a silhouette. The light is coming through the window is brighter than the space in front of the camera. And so what's happening is the person or thing in the foreground is becoming too dark because the camera is fixating and focusing on that bright light behind you. What you need to do is turn the camera away from that particular window so that you can regain the strength of the foreground shot, which is more important for your particular thing. Another thing that you could do is brighten up the foreground to match the background. But one of the things that's going to happen when you do that is you're going to engage light differences, where outside light is kind of a whiter light because it's hotter from the sun, so it comes off a lot stronger than inside light, which is usually orange or tungsten or even fluorescent light, which has a lot of purples and greens into it. So if you're trying to bump up the foreground and compete with a background that has a lot of light space, you're going to be having conflicting color issues. One of the things that's easy to do is just put some blinders up, close the curtains, and then just deal with one particular light as a source so that you can really use that as a base, and from there you can either raise that level or lower it. So what I usually do is close off windows. So one of the things that's really important when you're shooting with a camera is to make sure that you shoot for longer than you actually intend to expect to be actually on the screen. So for example, if I imagined a 5-second shot, I would shoot that for probably 7 to 10 seconds. Reason being is that when you get into that editing bay, you're probably going to chop off that end and beginning because there might be a little bit of start time or finish time before the actual action that you're interested in comes across. And so the more wiggle room you give yourself up front, the easier it will be in the editing room to be able to trim and get specifically what you're interested in. To start with a wide angle shot, which means kind of give an overall perspective, turning angle about what's going on in a particular room, and then start diving down into more and more specific areas where you break down certain sections of the room. For example, the cabinets or the closet space or what's in the particular med cart. Start with an overall of the room and then break down the individual features so that it's easier for people to kind of physically orient. Start with a big picture and then gets more and more tight into those specific details. So you want to spend a lot of time going slowly and surely through all the different options of the room. You're going to want to open up cabinets and shelves, show specifically where certain types of equipment and supplies are located. So again, we're going to want to start at the head of any particular mannequin that we're dealing with and just work our way down with all the features that might be necessary for learners to know about in terms of taking vital signs, airway control management, chest compressions, heart-lung sounds, all the things that are kind of the statistics of things that we're utilized in kind of the brochure or packet about that particular mannequin are things that you're going to want to run through. And the more that you can actually physically show those things happening on screen with a demonstrator, the better it will be for your learners, because they'll see the process visually for themselves, especially things with like a cry. One special important thing to note about mannequins is things that they definitely can't do. For example, keeping ink away from the mannequins is something that we definitely want to try to maintain so that we don't stain them. You can't actually give oral medications or liquids to the mannequin. That's something that we want to note. So anything that you feel like questions come up of what we can and can't do, the can't is also really important to be able to walk through. Different mannequins have different features, and so I think if you're a multi-mannequin institution, you probably want to reshoot a particular tutorial on each specific mannequin that you have in terms of different product lines. Another thing that will be really useful and handy for you is voiceover recording. So if you go in and physically shoot all the different spaces that you want to share in a room, all the features of a mannequin in close detail. So basically what you could do is sit in front of the camera, talk out what the learners were going to see in one continuous flow, and then in the editing bay take the video out and just use the audio from your talk and overlay that with the visuals of the individual compartments that you were demonstrating, and then that way you can get a seamless kind of explanation of all the things that are being seen in a really quick and easy way to kind of explain that. It's really important to get as clean of audio as possible, so you definitely want to have a quiet space around you. You don't want to have loud noises going on in any way, because that will come back to haunt you later on in the editing room. If you can, you want to try to be able to get a boom mic on your camera. That will definitely increase the quality of the sound that's coming out, as opposed to an onboard microphone like this one here, because anytime you touch the camera, the onboard microphone will actually pick it up, whereas the boom mic will have a little bit more space and distance from the camera itself. Make sure that when you're about to do audio video recording, that you kind of do the silly silent treatment of a 3. Because the more that you create a space between that pushing of record and the person to be able to start their process of explaining what's going on, the more opportunity and options you give yourself in the editing room. And obviously, the closer that you are physically to the person that you're speaking to, the better the audio quality will be. You can always use the camera. There will always be an audio check feature somewhere on the camera which will demonstrate what your levels are. Because you're recording in a digital recording format, 0 would be your peak point, where you would actually lose the audio because it was too loud, and it goes down from there. The mid-level range of 12 is where you really want to hit, so you can check and see when that person is talking to you in an audio fashion. If they're hitting that 12 mark, or the 2 lines for the stereo input are hitting around a 12, that's where you want to be. So just make sure that they either speak up to hit that 12, or you bring the camera closer. So one of the last things about a simulation tutorial that I find I think is important is to kind of reveal what's behind the Wizard of Oz mirror, kind of going through the computer systems that are around there and the positions involved with kind of maintaining the simulation lab space, as well as the general procedures, like that they should not touch anything at the end of a simulation scenario, put everything down, don't worry about cleanup, go ahead and exit the room. You kind of want to start to finish, give them all the important details and information that they're going to need to be able to just enter in the space, go to work, put everything down, and enter in the debriefing. So the more that you can kind of explain the process to them. I also like to kind of teach and educate about what the staff do and how the process works over there, so that it kind of demystifies it just a little bit and makes it a little more humanly and a little more realistic for them across the board. So with regards to editing, that's kind of another process. I'm probably going to link to a great tutorial that I found at the end of this video, or on the comments section that's on YouTube already, about explaining the basics in general production in the editing phase. So I hope this video tutorial has been helpful for you in terms of just the basic process of putting together a little production. Of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Lance@healthysimulation.com. Check out healthysimulation.com. There'll be a lot of useful information, tips, and tricks. We'll keep most of the comments there on that page, so if you have further questions, we'll lead it to that post back there. Make sure you visit healthysimulation.com. There's a lot more useful information like this. I really love sharing about healthcare simulation. It's just a fantastic process, and so if there's anything that you're interested in further, definitely send me an email. But there's a lot of resources there, links and tutorials, product reviews for some of the vendors associated with healthcare simulation, how-tos, as well as explanations of the process of simulation, the how and the why, and a community for all of those simulation champions out there who really appreciate this field. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.